All right, let's talk about building new habits. If you've ever felt like you're fighting an uphill battle trying to make a change stick, you're definitely not alone. Today, we're going to dig into the real science of how our brains actually form habits, especially after the age of 50. And here's a spoiler. It's a story of incredible, untapped potential.
First things first, we have to talk about that magic number. I'm sure you've heard it a million times. Just do something for 21 days and poof, it's a habit. But is that actually true? What does the science say? Well, it tells a very different and honestly a much more freeing story.
Yeah, it's a total myth. And it's not just wrong, it's kind of a damaging one. Because when you get to day 22 and that new gym routine still feels like a huge chore, it's so easy to think, well, I guess I failed. But you didn't fail. You were just given the wrong map.
So where in the world did this 21-day idea even come from? Let's pull this thing apart and look at what decades of actual research tell us about the real timeline for change.
You see, the whole 21-day thing was never a scientific study on how we form habits. It was actually a misinterpretation of an observation from a plastic surgeon back in the 60s. He just noticed it took his patients about that long to get used to their new faces. Real science, on the other hand, shows us that the journey is deeply personal. It's different for everyone.
Now check this out. This data is from a major study at University College London. They found that the average time it took for a new behavior to feel automatic was actually 66 days. But look at that range. For some people, it was as quick as 18 days. For others, it took up to 254 days. That's over 8 months.
So what's the big takeaway here? It's this. Throw out the calendar. Building a new habit is not a race. It's more like tending a garden, and it's unique to you. Your success isn't measured in days, it's measured in just showing up consistently.
Okay, so to really get why that timeline can be so different for everyone, we've got to look under the hood. We need to look at the actual neurological machinery that builds every single habit you have, from brushing your teeth to how you relax at night.
It all comes down to this really simple but incredibly powerful three-step loop. First, there's a cue. That's the trigger that tells your brain to go into autopilot. Then comes the routine, which is the action itself. And finally, you get the reward, which tells your brain, hey, that was good. Let's remember this loop for next time.
Now, when a habit is brand new, the CEO of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, is doing all the heavy lifting. That's why it feels so hard and it drains all your willpower. The whole goal of forming a habit is to repeat that loop enough times that the job gets handed off to a deeper, more automatic part of your brain called the basal ganglia. That's the part that runs on autopilot.
And this brings us to the amazing biological principle that makes this all possible: neuroplasticity. It's not just a buzzword. It's your brain's fundamental, lifelong ability to physically rewire itself. You know that saying in neuroscience, neurons that fire together wire together? Well, it's literally true. Every single time you repeat that habit loop, you are physically strengthening a circuit in your brain.
So, how does this all apply to the brain that's over 50? Well, the story here isn't one of decline like we used to think. Nope. It's a story of sophisticated adaptation.
You know that old, kind of depressing view of the aging brain, that it just sort of decays? Well, modern neuroscience has completely thrown that idea out the window. The reality is, the mature brain isn't just getting older, it's getting more specialized and, in a lot of ways, much more efficient.
Think about it. A lifetime of experience has given your brain incredible strengths. You have what's called crystallized intelligence, we usually just call it wisdom, and a much better ability to see patterns. Your brain has spent decades pruning away useless connections to become a lean, mean, efficient machine. The real challenge isn't that you can't change, it's just the inertia of the superhighways you've already built. So, knowing all this, how do we work with this sophisticated brain instead of against it? Well, here is a practical toolkit, and it's all grounded in the science of neuroplasticity.
This might be the single most important rule of them all. If you want to start meditating, don't try for 30 minutes. Just aim for 1 minute. Heck, aim for one deep breath. When a habit is so small that it sounds ridiculous, it sneaks right past your brain's resistance. This guarantees consistency, and consistency is what builds those new neural roads.
Next up, here's a brilliant trick called habit stacking. All you do is anchor your new, fragile habit onto a strong, automatic one you already have. For example, after I pour my morning coffee, I will do 1 minute of stretching. You're literally piggybacking the new habit onto an old one, giving it a huge head start.
Let your environment do the hard work for you. Want to build a reading habit? Leave a book on your pillow.
You're making the cue obvious. Want to break the habit of eating junk food? Simple. Don't keep it in the house. That's increasing the friction. You want to engineer your surroundings so that the good choice is the easy choice.
And finally, none of this other stuff works if you don't have a solid foundation. Deep sleep, that's when your brain actually strengthens all those new pathways you're building. And chronic stress, it floods your system with cortisol, which is basically poison for the parts of the brain you need for change. So sleep and stress management aren't luxuries. They're non-negotiable requirements for neuroplasticity.
When you put all this science together, it leads to this really powerful, really empowering new way of thinking about the whole process of change.
Your brain after 50 is not some fixed, crumbling statue. A much better way to see it is as a mature garden. It's got these magnificent, deep-rooted trees. That's your wisdom and your experience. But there's always fertile soil right between them, just waiting for new seeds. It's a dynamic, living landscape.
So the big idea here, the main thing to take away, is that you are not a prisoner of your biology or your past habits. Not at all. You are the architect. You hold the tools to consciously sculpt your own mind, to carve new pathways, and to shape the person you want to become.
Ultimately, the number of days is completely irrelevant. Whether it's 21, 66, or 254, it just doesn't matter. What matters is the daily, patient act of showing up, of tending to your own growth. So the only real question left is, what will you choose to sculpt next?